If you're anything like me, when you get a new exotic within Destiny 2, your immediate thought is not, hey, this would be really fun in raids. Oh, I bet this would be great in Grandmaster Nightfalls. Rather, you think to yourself, I wonder what pain and misery I could inflict upon my fellow guardians within Crucible. So that's what I'm going to do here today. I'm going to give you a breakdown of all of the relevant stats of the new Ager Scepter within PvP and give you a bit of my opinion as to whether I think this weapon is worth running or not. Raw information in a vacuum is more or less pointless. You need perspective in order to contextualize what the information has been given to you in order to make an informed decision. All that basically meant I hate trace rifles. First and foremost, they take up that exotic slot. It's very rarely worth running an exotic weapon that isn't just the top of the top. Things like the Vex Mythoclast, the Lorentz Driver, and the Ace of Spades sit in that top spot because of how effective they are for that exotic slot. Secondly, trace rifles take up special ammo, meaning that unless you are running a double scavenger layout, which means that typically you're going to have to give up an armor mod stat, it's going to be very difficult to maintain a good ammo economy. And even then, I would not recommend generally running double special, because if the enemy team isn't running that much special ammo, you're going to be starving for most of it. And lastly, the TTK for most of these weapons, however good, is just not worth it when you've got special weapons that can instantly kill a target. This Ager Scepter breaks that mold. If you've got somebody like myself who's normally not a fan of trace rifles telling you that they like this trace rifle, it's worth paying attention to. Now, I may not be the best player in the world, but I am capable of holding my own, and I've used a lot of different weaponry in the game. When I sat down with this weapon finally after the long quest step to get it, I was pleasantly surprised with how effective it actually was. Yo, this trace rifle's fantastic. Holy crap. This trace rifle is so good. This is going to be freaking an amazing weapon. Holy crap. Look at just how it just snaps to targets. Look at that. Like, damn. And I froze him and he fell off the edge. It was funny. He's dead. They keep falling off cliffs. So let's talk about some of the specific stats. Starting off the TTK. The TTK is very common for what we see for trace rifles. It's a 0.67 TTK. Now, again, information in a vacuum, not very important. What this is similar to, what this has the biggest competition for, is high impact pulse rifles. High impact pulse rifles push a very far range with a similar 0.67 TTK if you're capable of hitting 5 to the head, 1 to the body. The nice thing about trace rifles is that they don't require perfect accuracy. You can miss a little bit, hit some of the body shots, and you'll still be fine. Of course, every shot that you do take means that less ammo will be in the weapon, which means less overall efficacy, yada, 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 not infinite ammo. You get the point that I'm trying to get at. It's 17 to the head, 13 to the body. The range on this weapon is 35 meters. So again, not anything special thus far. Let's talk about the actual effect. Maybe that's what makes this so unique, and it definitely helps. First of all, how this works. Basically, if you kill a target with this weapon, it will create a stasis explosion that will cause 50 stacks of slow within 10 meters for roughly 5 seconds. What's interesting is I'm pretty sure that this is just the same code that they used from the original Hunter dodge, as this is the exact same damage numbers, and it even triggers the same sound. If you listen, you'll hear that it's the exact same sound from the original Stasis Hunter Winter Shroud dodge. The 5 seconds of 50 stacks is pretty significant, but there's a handful of drawbacks that makes this disappointing. The biggest disappointment for this is that the stasis fragments don't consistently work with the effect that this gives. For example, Whisper of Durance, as we were able to test, doesn't seem to do anything to the duration nor the stacks of slow that they gave. They were pretty much just the same, like maybe an extra second, but that's not super duper important when you're talking about an overall 5-second stasis timer. It does obviously trigger other things, such as if you were to freeze a target and then kill them, you can do things like Whisper of Bonds for the super energy, Whisper of Hedrons for the bonus stats. You can do things like the Whisper of Chains, which gives you a bit of damage resistance. It's a little frustrating that these aren't consistent, but nevertheless, there's still some stuff that this weapon does bring to the table. One of the things that's interesting to this, and it's not unique to this weapon, but it is something that I haven't seen said aloud quite yet, is that stasis damage technically isn't kinetic damage, which again, it's like you kind of expected it as much, but it does make things interesting. I was running this sidearm here, which had Disruption Break on it, and I was not able to get any bonus damage out of Disruption Break. By the way, speaking of bonus damage, the Stasis fragment that gives you bonus damage to kinetic weapons does not trigger on this, all within that same line of thinking. This is technically an energy weapon in the kinetic slot. If you were thinking to yourself, hey, this would be cool if I were to say freeze a target and then continue to damage them with the same weapon that I froze them with, more or less, that would be a cool synergy or a cool combo. No, it unfortunately doesn't work that way. Talking about some of these stats, the stats are very comparable to something like the Divinity. The difference is, and this is the big thing that I think, now you're gonna have to bear with me on this, this is why I think this weapon feels so much different than the other weapons within the trace rifle category. This weapon's handling by default is way better. This feels so much smoother. I suspected that it might be the aim assist to this weapon that's causing this to be so good, which there does seem to be a high amount of aim assist. It looks like the Cold Heart has a similar aim assist value, as you can kind of get an idea from this footage here, but the handling is so nice. I'm able to snap in between weapons and targets so consistently and so fluidly that it feels very, very good to shoot. Stability and recoil are also something that are interesting to this weapon as well. The stability is fine enough. It's exactly the same as the other trace rifles, at being very, very high, within 10 to 20 points of being max, but the recoil is quite good. As you can see from the Cold Heart, it has a bit of left and right kick, whereas with the Ager Scepter, it's almost vertical, which makes the weapon very consistent. And lastly, this is something that won't ever be on a stat sheet, the sights are very clean. It's unusual for this to be such a big determinant factor for weapons, but you see this a lot. One of the big complaints that I've had for a lot of, let's say, Ruinous Effigy, which is my least favorite of the trace rifles, that is, in my opinion, very hard to see your target when you are holding down that trigger, because the colors blend together so well, so it's just kind of becomes a big mess of just purple that you're firing in the general direction of your enemy with. This weapon has a clear red dot sight, meaning that if you have a general idea of where the target's head is, you can just kind of put that red dot sight on it and you'll be able to consistently deal damage. Overall, I think this weapon has a bit of potential, but I don't think you'll ever see it in high level play. I think this would be a really fun weapon to run within sixes, obviously, as it has some interesting potential for chaining those slows together. I can definitely see us making a build specifically with the Mantle of Battle Harmony once we get a little bit more settled in with this weapon, but all in all, I'll give this like a 7 out of 10 if you're looking for a number for this. It's fine. I don't think it's ever going to compete with the big top dogs, but it is a fun weapon to shoot. And if you're like me and you don't really like trace rifles, give this one a go. You might be pleasantly surprised. Thank you so much for watching. Bless your faces, and deuces.